unmistakable tinge of what today would be labeled male chauvinism appears. Also, and perhaps more
I sent you
surprisingly,
some
there is a
images
strong
in
element of
chat.
social Darwinism, normally associated with conservative
Hi,
thought
everybody.
and politics.
I'm going to pause this.
In the art.
How is everybody? Hope you're all having a great day. I know I am. Hi, Ash. How are you?
Did you ask me how I was?
How are you, Pat?
Did you ask me or did you ask someone else? I couldn't hear you.
I'm asking everyone. It's a general hi. How is everyone? Is everybody fine?
I've been busy. I had a very busy day at work. It was difficult.
I know.
What's up, Hashkush? And Grom.
So, yeah, let me see if I can get this started up.
What are we starting? Oh, the jams that I can't hear?
The jams that you can't hear. That I promise, I'm going to find a way for you to be able to hear them. Promise.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect. Okay. Everything feels right now. Good afternoon, San Diego Jay. He's lying, there are no jams. I'm just been gaslighting Pat this whole time.
People in chat pretend they're hearing MF Doom. All just to make me look foolish.
Mm-hmm. And there's gotta be, like, a way to fix this. Because this ain't gonna work the way it is now. Is it like window projected or something?
Oh, jeez.
That one? Oh, no, that's not it.
A pyramid of pots and pans.
Oh, that's why. I have to, like, shrink this thing down, I guess.
Shrink it down, I guess.
And we're doing great today. We're off to a marvelous start, in my opinion.
What is that quote back there? Occasionally and unmistaken.
Oh, that's from the video I had playing. For,
is that a secret?
Yeah, it's a secret.
Is that the secret quote?
The secret quote. Yeah, maybe I'll just leave it at, like, the full thing. I can just get this thing like that. This is what people want to see.
Yeah, this is the Patreon content, guys.
Yeah, you don't realize it, but this is the Patreon content. Right.
You've all been very subtly charged on each of your credit cards in a very unassuming way that you don't actually realize is us, but that is your monthly subscription to our Patreon.
Yes.
Congratulations.
We hope that you're enjoying the benefits.
You're part of a very exclusive audience that gets to see the behind-the-scenes inner working.
I feel like that's it right there. That's what it looks like. That's as good as it's gonna get. I mean, come on. What other streamer, would you watch for 4 hours at a clip just basically learn how to use OBS in real time? Come on.
Come on.
Come on. We gotta be like one of the most interesting ones, right? So yeah. Just snagged Lacerdo's Critique of a Black Legend. Oh hell yeah, Dr. Maggot. I've read it. It's really good, for something that's published, or not published, but translated rather from, like, I think Portuguese originally into English. There's very few, serious translation errors or anything like that. It still reads, pretty decently. So, congratulations. Hope you enjoy it. It's just the sound of someone falling downstairs to a pyramid of pots and pans. So when should we tell them, Pat?
About which thing? I know that there's a lot of very interesting announcements. Do we talk about our official status? Is that what you're referring to?
Let's start with the other one first.
What? That it's Johnny's birthday today? Oh wait, should I not do that? Is that doxing you?
I don't know. I was gonna. I already put it in like the fucking message that goes out. It's someone's special birthday today.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. We just keep it. It's someone's birthday. Yeah, I won't tell you which of us it is, but it's one of our birthdays.
I was literally gonna call. You didn't say shit, you bastard. I mean, I didn't get a chance to. I was like fixing up the everything, and making sure the ambient lighting was right. And
how did it feel to be born today? Some amount of years ago.
Some amount of years ago. Is that? Hey, what's going on, Raiders?
Whoa.
Welcome.
Whoa.
Welcome to the Johnny Dialectically birthday party.
Just in time to celebrate Johnny's birthday.
Yeah.
You hear that, everyone? Ninja Can. Wow, subscription. 4 months on a 3-month streak. Thank you so much.
And
Johnny's birthday. Everybody pile in.
Yes.
Everybody pile in and let Johnny know how you feel about him.
Also, Wilco, I got the candles, and I'm gonna give them to my mom and my sister.
Excellent.
I hope my mom isn't watching right now.
I feel bad because last year I got my mom a bunch of presents in India. Like I got her like jewelry from like a place that like very, very close to where they extract like the rubies from while in Agra.
Yeah.
Whoa, Taikero, thank you so much for the subscription also at 4 months. Thank you. And now I feel like all my gifts are going to be dog shit because I'm not traveling. Pat, you're really loud. Uh-oh.
Oh, shit.
How's that? Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah. Sounds better in my ear.
All right. Why didn't you tell me before?
I don't know. I mean, I just figured,
Maverick also with the subscription. Man, we got a hype train incoming if this keeps going. You have a limited time to earn exclusive emotes.
Johnny, I haven't realized that my girlfriend is a
93% to a hype train.
Oh, goddamn. We're in a hype train right now?
Yeah, because 3 people just subbed.
I don't even know what we do anymore for the hype train. Should we just,
We don't have to do anything.
Okay, we don't have to do anything? Alright, okay. Alright.
Oh, Maverick dropping the bits. That's going to put us into a level 1 hype train. Hashkush coming with more bits. Thank you. We can put the jams on. You want to throw Rumor on?
Yeah, I guess. Let's do it.
Throw on Rumor. That's my shit.
I can always edit this part out when we upload it to YouTube, which, by the way, I do have a lot coming up, I think, like, this coming week and next week, so we may not be streaming on... We're not going to be streaming on Sunday. We're going to have to make it up to you guys on Monday, and then the week following that may also present some issues.
Oh, wait, what? What happened?
Not, like... this coming Sunday, but the following one too?
Well, I have to move that weekend.
Yeah.
I hope it won't be a problem, but it is what it is, as the kids say. So probably more will be revealed as time gets closer. But yes, I may have some issues because I will be completely moving out of this house and moving into a new residence of Philadelphia, where I will have free reign of a finished basement to conduct all of my streaming and podcast activities. So I'm hoping to build a nice little subversive dungeon down there, where I and we will be producing more content and maybe in more media fashions than we currently do. So it's going to take time, it's going to take money, but hopefully that will all begin next week.
Yeah. That, and, we'll finally be able to, because namely, I haven't been pushing the subs or anything too hard. 76ers suck. They got whatever. So we haven't been pushing it that hard because that's all gonna fall on under my taxes. But when we do have everything set up, y'all can donate finally, right? We'll have that set up for the Twitch stream, and then finally we'll have the what the hell is it? I don't know. I think we're gonna have like better mics. We're gonna have like one of those little things so I can just push buttons and have sound effects going and shit. You know, we'll have like much better production value. A lot of it is mainly gonna go into the Twitch stream and other like media that we're gonna be making. Oh, because I don't have my purple lights on. That's it.
Pro streaming.
Yeah, we're gonna be pro streamers, and hopefully, right? Depending on how much we're able to get in, it'll make it easier for us to travel.
Larry, with a party of 10. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry.
And Sean, where do you live? Where do you live that is so illustrious that you feel the need to trample all over the reputation of the proletarian city of Philadelphia?
The comradely city of love.
Fucking Philly. They're all jealous. You know what they say in Philly? You know what they say?
What?
They hate us. Oh wait, no, that isn't what they said. What did they say? Oh, no one likes us. We don't care. That's what they say. No one likes us. We don't care.
The city of brotherly. Go fuck yourself.
We're like a more affordable, more traversable New York City.
Right.
I just in Boston recently. I can tell you, Boston ain't got shit on the city of brotherly love.
Philly is like all of the best parts of Manhattan overshadowed by all the worst parts of Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, and it creates a beautiful tapestry of interesting places and activities, good food, but also the threat of violent crime at every moment.
There's always something to do, and
all woven in like Cheese Whiz weaves through a cheesesteak.
There's always something to do, but at least like 2.5 out of 5 of those things could get you arrested.
Yeah, and also, yeah, dirt bikes. We have squads of dirt bike kids that rip through city streets and on sidewalks at any given time, and it's in your best interest to just let them go. I would not interfere with them. It can be somewhat dangerous to do so.
No, yeah, don't do that. What, like
yes,
a bike
made out of dirt.
Are you telling me a dirt made this bike? Why would you interfere with the natural habitat?
Right.
Alright, so I think now's a good time to pull up, this other little piece of news, right? Before we get started. Chat, what are we? Who are we? Right? Especially for the Raiders that just came in that may have never witnessed this channel before. Who are we, Pat?
We are Subversive History.
We're a multimedia community project seeking to bring attention to the revolutionary struggles of the world's often unsung and frequently misunderstood sectors. These are the stories of the demonized, vilified, whitewashed, or otherwise forgotten campaigns against imperialism, colonialism, capitalist exploitation, and racial apartheid. The orthodoxy of Western hegemony has often labeled these dissidents as subversive, and these are the struggles that we aim to illuminate.
Yeah. And today is the long anticipated conclusion of Marx at the Margins, which was a very enlightening book to read.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned a lot from it. In hindsight, it may not have been the best book to go through on stream. I mean, I'm personally grateful that we did, because I think this is important for a lot of people to know, especially with the kind of content that we cover regularly. But this is a very dense academic work that is really just like scouring a lot of sources and, bolstering a thesis. It's a very academic style of writing, which may not always translate into these presentations that well, but overall I think it makes a really good discussion point for a lot of these topics.
Johnny, you're legally obligated to say Multimedia Subversive Incorporated now. I mean, ultimately, it's just gonna make things a lot smoother for us, like, you know, financially and legally.
Pat, you're not in class. You're not getting graded. I grade myself.
No, he really does. Pat takes this all very, very, very seriously, right? Not to say that I don't, but I am not gonna lie, I don't have the kind of constitution that Pat does to literally read a whole other book, right, in reference to a paragraph.
That only happens sometimes.
Only
happens sometimes.
The fact that it happens at all, Pat, is something, in my opinion, worth stating and definitely worth like being impressed by, right? You know.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, where the hell are we?
So this is going to be a little bit short because we decided to really, when I was making these slides, it turns out that if I went through the last chapter and the conclusion, I was up to like 90, 90 slides, and I was trying to revise it, and it was just kind of like tough for me, especially because work's been real busy for me the past few days. So we decided to just go through the conclusion because the conclusion is going to really succinctly summarize not only the whole book, but also the chapter that we were going to go over, which is really what we're going over here, is to try to summarize it as best we can and then just kind of have a discussion about the main tenets of that chapter. So it's actually, it seems like it would be more of just like easier on everybody to just go over the conclusion. Also, I'm a little bit exhausted on this specific work. I'm very excited to start our new book, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more. We'll talk about that more at the end.
Yeah, we'll go more over that, and hopefully who we're gonna have on at the end of June for that book, which I assume like we'll be done by June, right? You think?
What'd you say?
We'll probably be done with the Palestine book by the end of June, right?
I believe so. I would say, yeah.
Okay,
Why?
Okay. Oh, because that's when he's available. So
Sure. Right. Yeah. So what? Shall we get into it?
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Grom's good. Okay, I'm gonna bring this up because I know that that Grom isn't gonna be here for much longer. So Grom, if you have, I don't want to like make him miss out, but we're gonna be starting on Wednesday. We're gonna be going on Wednesday. Starting on Monday, I guess now. Sorry, we're all over the place right now. But we're gonna be reading The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé.
If the theory isn't in speech bubbles and half of it isn't just kapow, I don't want it.
Preoccupied Palestine, indeed.
100%.
All right. That's not. I didn't say make it sound like he's dying. I'm saying he's not going to be staying on the stream with us for much longer. I know he goes to bed soon. I know he's already dosed. I know he's already dosed on melatonin and is slowly slipping away from us.
Yeah. Oh, Grom, have you tried the 12 milligram yet?
Have any of you tried the liquid yet?
I have not been on the liquid.
You're not getting down with the melatonin liquid. I can't even really fuck with you. If you show up around my spot and you got tab melatonin, I don't even think I can fuck with you.
Yes, he will not be with us much longer, as in he is going to bed. He must slumber. Pat, have you ever tried boof in the liquid?
No, I'm not even going to dignify that response.
Surgery might end it for me, and Chad has already called dibs on all my shit. That's horrendous. What is wrong with you all? All right, that's enough of that. All right.
Yeah. All right, so let's get right into it. And This is kind of good too, because, maybe you weren't here step by step with us as we went through all these chapters. But the good news is we're going to go over it all right now, step by step, which is great. So this journey into Marx's writings on nationalism, race, ethnicity, and non-Western societies has, I hope, revealed the multi-dimensional character of his overall intellectual projects, especially in his later years. Marx's critique of capital, it has been shown, was far broader than is usually supposed. To be sure, he concentrated on the labor-capital relation within Western Europe and North America, but at the same time, he expended considerable time and energy on the analysis of non-Western societies as well as that of race, ethnicity, and nationalism. While some of these writings show a problematically unilinear perspective, and on occasion traces of ethnocentrism, the overall trajectory of Marx's writings on these issues moves into a much different direction. The foregoing discussion has shown Marx to have created a multilinear and non-reductionist theory of history, to have analyzed the complexities and differences of non-Western societies, and to have refused to bind himself into a single model of development or revolution. So that is kind of restating the overall thesis of this book, because it is a commonly held misconception, which I'm learning now, one that I had before I cracked open this book, that Marx was obviously a Western European individual who had Western European ideas, influenced by Western European learning institutions.
Right.
And that definitely presented itself in extremely racist ways. It may actually, I think that this Mr. Anderson here, who wrote this book, is actually running a little bit of cover saying traces of ethnocentrism. I think there was overt ethnocentrism in quite a lot of his writings.
Yes, especially the early ones.
Especially in his earlier writings. I think there was rampant ethnocentrism throughout those writings. I don't think we need to run cover or massage that in any other way. I think, and I don't think it's particularly damning to have done that as a young man, and then maybe to have rigorously learned more and evolved those opinions to be more knowledgeable, or more what's the word that I'm looking for here? A little bit more nuanced when it comes to these other cultures.
Well, I think not even just nuanced. You could just say literally educated, because I think that we see that he makes these kind of what's the word, uneducated assumptions about Indian culture, right? Indigenous culture,
Russian culture,
especially when it comes to Engels, and over time, right, and after researching things, right, develops a far more contextualized, nuanced, if not outright supportive position of these people.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey,
what's up, Smash? Thanks for being here. So then, we have the next portion of this, which is this idea of Marx's unilinear approach to economic development, which I was under the impression was something that was upheld or maintained up until Mao, allegedly shattered this deterministic unilinear approach to socialism, which requires a progression from a feudal peasant-based arrangement to a capitalist arrangement, and then ultimately to socialism, and that it had to follow that essential order. And it seems like that was actually something that is Marx himself spoke against or did not believe.
Right. But the funniest part is that you have people well after Marx's death talking about that very idea, that unilinear approach to development, right, in places like Indonesia. I think even Allende believed the same thing too, right? That
even Guatemala. I think even Arbenz believed a similar thing as well.
Yeah, that they needed to develop capitalism before they could try and build socialism. I always disagree personally with it, but this is the reason I have respect for Latin American anarcho-syndicalism and other leftist, mostly some vein of anarchism movements involving in indigenous groups. I mean, trust me, they have just as many problematic characters, just as many problematic theories as, any other leftist group of,
Well, I think what Dr. Maggot is referring to is maybe a not having some kind of like a hindrance on like a deterministic pattern of economic evolution, and I assume that they're referring to like the Zapatistas, which I would hesitate from labeling them necessarily anything like that, because I know that they have shied away from having a specific label on them. And not only that, I've seen Subcomandante Marco speaking in front of a giant hammer and sickle and things like that. Not that I'm trying to like essentially like kind of co-opt them into the ideology that I have, but also I will quote Michael Perenni in this, is that the revolution that feeds the children gets my support. I don't give a fuck if it's an anarcho-syndicalist revolution that is making progress against capitalist exploitation in Chiapas. Whatever they want to refer to that as, I will support it if it is making strides against those forms of exploitation.
Right. And I'm all for like like when we were going over the Sword and the Shield and we talked briefly about like the co-optation of like Malcolm X as like a Marxist-Leninist, when he never had any formal leanings towards like an ideology of Marxism-Leninism. A lot of like what his beliefs and like the things he said are very amenable to those things, especially later in life compared to earlier in life, but that doesn't necessarily
And Dr. Maggot, I didn't even know about that stuff in the early 1900s, Chile and Argentina. So, I mean, that sounds really interesting. But yeah, but I'm glad we're in agreement on the overall point. I apologize if I was mischaracterizing the specific groups you were referring to. I know that a lot of times that the Zapatistas are called this and they're called that and they're called this, and it's like, haha, tankies, look at this. And it's like, meanwhile, I've read, I have a Subcomandante Marco, a book of his writings where there's regular praise for Guevara, which is like, and regular like referral to like we are the continuation of Che Guevara and things like that. And it's like, I don't think it's helpful to try to be like, this is, the Zapatistas are for my side, or we win because the Zapatistas are anarchists or because they're socialists or like anything like that. It's like it's silly. I think you can just look at them for what they are and supporting them. Many Pan-African activists are left-wing. That is correct. I would say almost all would you say most Pan-Arab, Pan-African, these are mostly fall under a left-wing category.
Mostly.
Even though I can envision a non-left-wing organization.
Are there critiques of Pan-Arabism and Pan-Africanism? Yes. Are they all like, ardent, like, communists or anything? No. But like, are they worth supporting, especially in the context of, a decolonial movement? Yes.
You answered me right there. Powerful finger. I was going to say, but does that make them not left wing? And I would say that even if they were like kind of like anti-communist, and I think that that's like obviously up to your personal interpretation. Like, I know that a lot of them rejected Marxism, and I don't think that they were particularly adherent to Marx's writings, but in their the ways in which they were nationalist and nationalizing resources for the purpose of redistributing them to their, I wouldn't necessarily, I'm not like trying to jam that into like a square ideology into a communist hole, because I just want it to, but like, in terms of like what I believe like left wing is, that looks like, that's left-wing organization as far as I understand it.
Like
at least the bare minimum of what it takes for me to label it as that.
Like the Pan-Arab movement between like, Egypt and Syria is going to be different. It's going to have, some things that like appear very largely the same, but there's also going to be some very key differences. And again, it should be noted that like that doesn't necessarily make them communists, right? And I'm sure that like, even things that could be considered like left wing, right, in Afghanistan would be considered very right wing in some other countries. But, I hope that soon in the future we'll be able to read books more about these movements specifically, right? And not just as like, kind of a certain chapter, of another book. And hopefully like, we can educate, not just you, but ourselves as well on these topics in the future.
I would absolutely love to read more about the Pan-Arab movement and the histories of Arab countries. I think that, and obviously we're going to be talking about Palestine, which is obviously like, so we're going to be talking about Palestine, which is going to touch on those things. But obviously the Israeli-Palestine conflict is extremely, it's kind of niche in that conflict that exists in a very small area. Which, I mean, actually, I'm kind of tripping out right now because I'm not really. The development of Israel is really the precipice of almost everything that ensues in the next following 50 years after its inception. Like the stuff that we're talking about with Nasser and OPEC and things like that. Yeah. OPEC, one of the specific conditions of OPEC and one of the motivations for it was to embargo the United States because it supported Israel.
Right. Well, I mean, like even that is you need to, you know, learn about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. You need to learn about, like, you know, the Ottoman Empire before it was carved up, you know, and then it depends like what period of the Ottoman Empire, because that's a long-lasting history, you know, that is going to look very different depending on like what period of history you're examining. So again, this is all a lot of stuff, and we'll get deep in the weeds. Right.
Well, before we exit the weeds, real quick,
right.
Powerful finger. I like the existence of the non-aligned movement, at least back in the days when Marxists did work together with Pan-Arab nationalists. Right. I would say that in like after all the reading that I've done in my life, or like in this political awakening that I've had.
Yo, what's up, Ross?
In this political, I would say that I am. Out of anything that has existed in history, I am the most amenable or inspired by the non-aligned movement than anything else. And simply because it was a coalition of the third world, you know, vying for a equal or at least comparable playing field with the domination of Western Europe and the United States and Australia.
Right. And let's not get it twisted. The non-aligned movement included, you know, countries and governments that were not left wing.
Right.
So keep that in mind. But yeah, like they were still worth supporting over their colonization and over their, like, you know, subjugation by the West.
Right. And, you know, if you go to the Subversive History Facebook page that I made a while ago, you will see a picture of the non-aligned movement as the cover photo of the page. You know, a photo of Nkrumah and Nehru and Tito and Nasser. It was Nasser in that picture? I'm not sure.
I believe so. I know that he was there. Also, Pate King, how you doing? Also, that sounds fucking delicious. I'm hungry. You're killing me, dog.
Oh, and Sukarno was in it also.
Yes. What the hell was the other thing? At least back in the days when Marxists worked together with Pan-Arab nationalists, or we talked about that. All right, I think we're gonna talk about this slide. I'm not well versed on Peronism or Latin American movements or anything, but I just finished a college lecture that was surprisingly good, generally covering Latin American left movements, so it's fresh in my mind. And I love that. I love feeling inspired. You know.
Yeah. And if you're interested, I know that, and you know, say what you want about the person on Twitter or anything like that. I know that there is a Bad Empanada video on Peronism, and his video essays are generally pretty good and well founded. So I don't know if you've already looked into that, but you can watch that. I don't know of any other like, you know, leftist, left tube, bread tube video essays on Peronism other than that. But
hey, look, I know we've talked about this before. But, like, Twitter Bad Empanada and YouTube essay Bad Empanada are, like, two different people, all right? Yeah. And I will always say that, like, for the most part, most of his, like, you know, YouTube video essays are great.
Yeah, I've heard, I to be honest, I haven't even watched that one that much. Peronism is not something I understand very deeply. I hear a lot of people say a lot of really bad things about Peron.
No, Sam, that's because I tell him.
Yeah, it's because Johnny tells me about it. Like, Johnny has to catch me before I say bad things. Really? Fucks? Fucks has to get held back now?
I don't know, man. No, let's not. Let's not talk about Bad Empanada. Let's talk about in 1848, Marx and Engels set out on a theoretical model of capitalist society and its core contradictions in so prescient a manner that even today the descriptive power of the Communist Manifesto has no equal. In the manifesto, they also espoused an implicity and problematically unilinear concept of social progress. I fucking nailed that shit. Pre-capitalist societies, especially China, which they characterized in the ethnocentric terms as most barbarian society, were destined to be forcibly penetrated and modernized by this new and dynamic social system. In his 1853 articles for the New York Tribune, Marx extended these perspectives to India, extolling that he then saw as the progressive features of British colonialism, as against India's caste-ridden and unchanging traditional social order. In this sense, he argued India was a society without history, except for the history of its foreign conquerors, from Arab to British. Moreover, he held, Indian society had failed to resist these conquests due to both its caste divisions and the society's general passivity. The communal social relations and communal property of the Indian village offered a solid foundation for the resultant Oriental despotism. All of this left India particularly open to British colonialism, which in any case brought progress in its wake. Post-colonial and postmodern thinkers, most notably Edward Said, have criticized the Communist Manifesto, rightfully so, and the 1853 India writings as a form of Orientalist knowledge fundamentally similar to the colonialist mindset.
And they were.
And they were.
So this is like an interesting thing here because I've read Orientalism by Said, and I think that Said is one of the great minds of anti-colonial thought of like the modern age, and I think that his works are indispensable. And it used to be something that kind of like hurt my cognitive dissonance on the inside a little bit to hear him talking shit about my boy Marx, because I was like, damn, Edward Said is so based, but I think Marx is also based. Like, how do I rectify this? And now I've come from reading this, I've kind of been like, oh, they were both right. Like, yes, Marx's early writings were detestably Orientalist, and also they were like, subconsciously or unconsciously influenced by being part of the imperial core and probably part of Western learning institutions. And that's okay. We can admit that. We can admit that every single thing that Marx ever said or wrote was not the most based and precisely revolutionary thing that's ever been written.
Right. Wasn't Said also a Catholic as well?
I'm not sure about that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, I was kind of at my end anyway, so you're welcome to join in here. But now I've learned that while Said was absolutely right about some of the language in the manifesto and that definitely those 1853 India writings,
absolutely.
Now, but we can also say is that hey, maybe there's some more writings later in Marx's life that show that there was evolution there, so that we don't have to we can criticize his early writings as being those things, but we don't have to relegate him into a perpetual category of being Orientalist and a colonialist minded individual.
Because, dude, I'll use myself as an example. Go back and look at the things that I said and believed 10 years ago. Okay? Yeah. Obama's good. It's the Republican Party that is stopping all the good stuff from happening, right? That, America is a democracy, right? And that, the Iraq War, while bad, right, we had to do it to them.
Yeah. Right, exactly. 10 years ago, I was 22, which means I was at the height of my drug addiction. I'm trying to think what detestable political, I was just so politically unaware at all. But then right when I got clean is when I really started to I didn't even have social media while I was using drugs. So when I got clean is when I had my I jumped into social media and I just had opinions on stuff. And early on in like I said, and I put this a lot as I think is like a evolution of like a white guy from a suburban neighborhood has to go to, where like you hold what you believe to be anti-racist values, but like you translate that into like, I just don't even see race, bro. I'm so non-racist that like I don't even think about it, and like, you know, you don't recognize, you know, colorblind racism is what they refer to it as, and like I was like caught up in that mindset for a few years for sure. Uh-oh. Was Pat pro-Obama in 2012? I probably was, because in 2012 I was like 21 at that time, and I was probably just like, oh, he's black, so he's cool, and I will support him. I probably fell into that level of that was the depth of thinking I did about politics in 2012.
Oh, I mean, dog, like, as soon as he started talking about how, oh, I'm going to close Guantanamo Bay, I'm going to end the loopholes for the banks.
I never even heard him say that. I
did.
wasn't even listening enough to even hear those things.
I heard all those
I
things.
knew is that it was, so you did see race.
I mean, like, I fucking, what the fuck is it? I even remember him saying that, like, you know, day one, I'm going to codify Roe v. Wade into law. That's why I was so supportive of him. Right?
Here we are.
And look at me now, okay? I would probably make fun of me from 10 years ago, right? Yeah. In the same way that Marx probably...
I would potentially assault myself if I met myself from 10 years ago. There may have been a physical altercation where I had to hurt the past me.
Right. So, like, you know, that's the thing, is that, like, when it comes to these historical figures, right, these people that we read, you know, much like what we talked about when we did The Sword and the Shield, about, you know, the legacy of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, that, like, you know, you gotta understand that, like, you know, they were three-dimensional people that, like, grew throughout their lives, you know? Just because, you know, you have a quote, you know, from them from, like, you know, 20 years before they died does not mean that, like, they went to their grave thinking the same thing.
I love this. Leaping Larry. If today's you wouldn't beat up past you, are you even self-critique?
If present you wouldn't, you know, at least attempt to rob past you.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. So yeah. Okay. Well, we got really deep into that little talking there, but I do want to go through a couple other points here. So this is what Marx was writing in the early 1950s. He called China a most barbarian society, and that's what he believed. But I will throw one caveat into that. In the same time period that he was writing about that, he also wrote barbaric in regards to colonialism, what British was doing to China and to India, and what the Dutch were doing to Indonesia. So I'm not trying to run complete cover for that term barbarian because it's so racist to apply to non-Western cultures, but there is evidence that Marx did not use the term barbaric exclusively for non-white cultures. He seemed like he was kind of just throwing it around for maybe what he deemed to be you know, whatever, authoritarian. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a better word, or just something that he didn't
there's
agree
also
with.
Just the fact that English is like the third language he spoke. Right,
but I'm just saying, like, it seems it is telling that within the same writing that he did, where he called China barbarian, that he was calling British colonialism barbaric too. That shows that it's not an exclusively ethnically motivated term that he was just using to be like, look at these non-white barbarians over there.
Right.
So I still would find it detestable to use that type of language, especially to call China that, like, you know, China that. But yeah, and then he did say things at the time that there was a unfortunately progressive feature of colonialism. Now, he never said that it was a good thing, but he said that there was a silver lining to colonialism, that this will bring, and there's a quote of this, that he believed that colonialism would create an image of the mother country. He had a very, very, very lofty and idealistic view of colonialism at that time, whereas, like, while this is detestable and barbaric, as he said, that at the end of this, India will progress into a capitalist nation where it then can become socialist.
Right.
And he said a lot of other really bad things about how India had no culture, it had no history, that they were like passively run over by all these empires and all these things. And these are all views that change within a decade or 2 decades from the time of that writing. So we can't take those writings and be like, this is just definitive of Marx's belief throughout his entire life. That would be incorrect.
I said, not to mention, right, there's always the fact that Engels did eventually publish Capital into Russian.
Well, and he had correspondence with Russian revolutionaries.
Right. So, we joke a lot about that one part where, like, Engels is like, all Russians need to be ethnically cleansed from the world. There's the chance there's some growth in there.
Didn't the Roman Empire create the sense of homeland in Rome? I thought you were going to bring up the barbarian thing. I think the term barbarian comes
the
from
barber
Rome, right?
people.
Anything.
Berber.
Well, it was like a catch-all term for like the societies that were outside of the Roman Empire, right? They just referred to them as barbarians.
Yes. Unless, someone in chat wants to, correct me.
Right, Larry, that's actually precisely what is being debunked in this book. Absolutely, that it created this very like automated, deterministic, linear approach to growing to socialism. And what we're going to say is that even in Marx's own life, it wasn't Mao that changed that. It wasn't, even Marx in his, later we're going to see, and I don't want to give it away, but Marx even said, when I wrote that, I was only talking about Western Europe. I was specifically referring to how Western Europe did. This does not apply. He says it in his own words. It's not even something that you can that you can make an assumption about what he meant. He says it in his own words that he did not believe that. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes.
Right. And Dr. Maggot, we wholeheartedly agree. I think we, more than anything, talk about how, like, he is talking about things, and even Lenin is talking about things specific for where they are, what is available to them in their given time. And I think that if you could revive Lenin, or you could, revive the... Oh, hey, baby.
I'm just getting a sweatshirt.
All right. If you could revive, like, the haunting specter of Marx, right, he would probably tell you, like, you should probably read some stuff that's more current than what I wrote. There's more relevant data than anything that I ever wrote.
Yeah, and Dr. Maggot, instead of listening to Marx on most of the Third World, read Walter Rodney's Russian Revolution View from the Third World. Funny you mention that, because when we were starting this stream and me and Johnny were conversing, Johnny asked me, like, what's a list of books that you think that we should go over, just so that we can get an idea of what we want to do. And I would say within the first 5 books that I mentioned, Walter Rodney's Russian Revolution View from the Third World was one of the first ones that I mentioned, because I absolutely love that book. It's probably one of my top 5 favorite books that I've ever read at all times. I can say almost for certain that we will be reading that book on stream. I probably would have suggested that earlier, but we did Black Shirts and Reds, where we covered a lot of like Soviet history and things like that. And it's like, it just seemed like we don't want to just be like a USSR stream where every book is. I have so many books that I love about the USSR that I could just do and do and do. But we want to make sure that we're doing some economic stuff. We want to make sure that we're doing some indigenous stuff. We want to make sure that we're doing some going over the Palestine stuff. We want to do the civil rights movement. But we will. I can tell you that one is very high up on a list.
Maybe I can convince Pat that we should read this, for, Pride Month at some point. We're probably not going to be able to cover it during Pride Month, but I think it would be pretty interesting to cover it. I think it's got some interesting history in here. So, especially given the, everything going on in the world today in terms of like, gender ideology and like, the threat of trans people. I feel like that information is very important to get out. So, don't placate to the libs. All right. GDR will be very cool because they tried to build multi-party socialist democracy. Yeah. Depends on what time when you want to talk about Rome and their position, depending on their leadership during the 200s. And
they're having a whole like thing about Rome, so I'm like so far away from that.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not trying to be like mean or angry or anything about it, but we're probably not going to bring up, Rome or Roman history too much.
Unless we're going to read Michael Perenni's Death of Julius Caesar. At
some point, one day.
Which isn't really even one of my favorite books by Perenni, to be honest. I read it.
We could always do his problematic, Yugoslavia book.
Oh no, I'm not saying I disliked it, David. I did like the book, but I'm saying that in terms of like with Against Empire and Democracy for the Few, and the book that Johnny's saying is problematic, and Inventing Reality and Black Shirts and Reds, I would say that I liked all of those a little bit more than I enjoyed the Julius Caesar book. Maybe just because that was a little bit out of my wheelhouse of history, that might have been the reason. It's not anything wrong. Honestly, amongst the sea of bangers, that's true. Yeah, I think it just might be because of the relevant.
I think he says something about what, like one of something to do with war crimes.
I wouldn't say that it was. I think it's viewed problematically by a lot of people, but I don't think much of the information. I would have to go through it and like fact check the book to understand if any of it was wrong. But I think people like to castigate both Perenni and Chomsky for their very, very naughty views about the Yugoslavia situation.
Look, it was a land of many contrasts. A lot of stuff happened there, all right?
I think we actually have several Slavic comrades in the chat. Maybe if we go over that one day, we can have their participation.
I would love that. What about Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa? Again, yeah, no, we would love to read a Walter Rodney book.
That's another one that's right up there with it. Some of my favorite books.
It's Left of Karl Marx by Carol Davies about black communist Claudia Jones. Ooh, that would be interesting. There's a problematic parts of Black Shirts and Reds from an ML perspective, but it has vital information that can radicalize. Yeah, I mean, it's... we've talked about it a number of times, but there's a lot of stuff within Black Shirts and Reds, that, like, rightfully so, critiques a little bit of, like, the Soviet economy in that time, right? There's a lot of stuff within Black Shirts and Reds that kind of says stuff within, like, a passing sentence, right, or a passing paragraph, and doesn't really investigate that topic any deeper than that. And we made it a point to do that for like a newbie reader, and all of those episodes are up on our YouTube channel for anybody to watch. We spent hours going over every chapter within that book.
And David, simply do not perceive the Balkans. That's your best bet.
So, by 1856, 1857, the anti-colonialist side of Marx's thought became more pronounced, as he supported, also in the Tribune, the Chinese resistance to the British during the Second Opium War and the Sepoy Uprising in India. During this period, he began to incorporate some of the new thinking about India into one of his greatest theoretical works, the Grundrisse. In this germinal treatise on the critique of political economy, he launched into a truly multilinear theory of history, wherein Asian societies had developed along a different pathway than that of the successive modes of production that he had delineated for Western Europe, ancient Greco-Roman, feudal, and capitalist. Moreover, he compared and contrasted the communal property relations as well as the broader communal social production of early Roman society to those of contemporary India. While he had seen the Indian village's communal social forms as a prop for despotism in 1853, he now stressed that these forms could be either democratic or despotic. No in between.
Yeah. So, now we're starting to see a little bit of that, like, that progression here, because this is where, like, when you read that first 1953 writing about India and China, where Marx is all like, these are a bunch of fucking barbarians that colonialism will hopefully turn into, like, proletarianized, civilized cultures. But then just a few years later, he's being, like, supporting these anti-colonial uprisings that are just executing British people by the handful, by the dozen, and Marx is like gleeful about it. He's like writing to Engels saying that it's so delicious. He uses the word delicious at one point to describe what the sepoys were doing to the British colonial regime.
Right.
So you have to acknowledge that that's kind of at odds with his thing. Like, if he really did believe in this extremely deterministic progression, then you would have to say, oh no, those silly Indians are killing the only thing that's going to bring them to civilization. Like, they should just endure it, and hopefully they can come out on the other end more civilized and ready for revolution. And that's not what he was saying.
Yeah.
This one's me.
Mm-hmm.
During the 1860s, Marx concentrated on Europe and North America, writing little on Asia. It was in this period that he completed the first version of the first volume of Capital, as well as most of the drafts of what became volumes 2 and 3 of that work. However, it would be very wrong to think of Marx in this period as occupied solely with the capital relation and the class struggle, to the I'll save my comments. I can't stop mid-sentence and do it. That's what I always do. To the exclusion of nationalism, race, and ethnicity. In the period that he was completing Capital, he also concerned himself with the dialectics of race and class during the long years of the Civil War, 1961 to 1965. Although the North was a capitalist society, Marx threw himself into the anti-slavery cause, critically supporting the Lincoln government against the Confederacy. In his Civil War writings, he connected race to class in several important ways. First, he held that white racism had held back labor as a whole. Second, he wrote that the subjectivity of the enslaved black laboring class as a decisive force in the war's favorable outcome from the North. Third, he noted as an example of the finest internationalism, British labor's unstinting support for the North, despite the harsh economic suffering the Northern blockade on Southern cotton had unleashed on Manchester and other industrial centers. Finally, his First International warned presciently that America's failure to grant full political and social rights to the emancipated slaves would once again drown the country in blood. And this really shows like the depth of Marx's perspective in his writings, because I feel like in my understanding or my estimation of Marx before I read this book is that I thought that he was like someone who was solely fixated on the relation between class and class struggle and economics. Like that I always assumed that he looked at everything in a very unilinear way as it regarded to class struggle and did not actually have many opinions on race, or like I thought that this was like a newer thing that maybe came in the 20th century where people started saying that there's an intersectional relationship between race and class. I thought that that was like a more new, I thought that that was a building.
Did you think it came out of like the anti-colonial or like decolonial struggle?
Things like that, or just something like that, or maybe even like out of like the civil rights struggle in the United States, where you had like, you know, black radical socialists writing about certain things, and it came upon for that. But it turns out that Marx was recognizing this exact dynamic in his time, and he was not this like strict class reductionist that I think myself and many people view him as.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that's the thing is that, like we've said before, you know, it's Marx's very earlier work, the unilinear, I fucked it up again. The unilinear, like, you know, belief of early Marx, younger Marx, right? That probably did focus more on class than he did about, like, the contradictions or the dialectic of race and class, you know, or even gender and class.
Yeah.
Marx was so based, why didn't he read Mao? That actually would have been an interesting thing if you know, Marx had lived long enough to see Mao. He'd be like 300 years old. But...
Well, that's like a debate now, right? Is that like, there's this debate among like, I guess like left comms or maybe anarchists or ultras or whatever you want to refer to them as, that like, would Marx have viewed the Soviet Union and China and like, you can, you know, the list goes on, actually existing socialist countries, would he have been like, this is what I envisioned? Or would he say that this was an aberration of what he envisioned? Or would he say that this is like, you know, I imagined that with the thinker that Marx was, that there would be some kind of a critique as well as praise in many, he would probably write 100,000 words about it, and it would be probably very in depth, but that's something that people bring up quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, here's the thing is that like Marx is relying on information that he's getting mostly from, correct me if I'm wrong, Western Europeans studying China, and not from, you know, people of China writing their own history and writing like, you know, their own books, right, for him to study, right, that have been translated into English or, you know, what have you, or German or whatever other fucking language that he spoke or read, you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, his knowledge of these things is going to be limited by what is available to him.
Precisely.
In the same way that, like, you know, I'm sure many of us we're limited, right, in our perspective of the world and our perspective of conflicts, our perspective of American politics by what we are exposed to, by what is readily available to us.
Always. Let me see if there's anything else in this one that needs. Okay, yeah. So like, and this is the amount of time where like you might hear about this too. Like if you like on like Left Book where people are always arguing leftist infighting and this and that. Where they'll bring up racist thing that Marx said. Can you find the N-word in Marx's writings? Yes. Several times, over and over, you can find that. But the kind of like...
But here's the thing. Where he's using it, it's always in support of their liberation, and it is always in, like, support of them overthrowing or, like, in defense of their humanity.
Which leads us to believe that he may have been a bit confused as a German man as to what maybe the term that he was using that maybe he had read or heard. I feel like I may extend him the benefit of the doubt there. It's funny. I wish Wilco was here right now just so that he could clip me saying, yeah, Karl Marx used the N-word, but
not in the bad. All right, so actually, it's interesting you bring that up, Telefo, because he actually does at one point in the middle of a German sentence switch to English
for one word,
and it's that one. Or no,
one word.
Well, no, it's two words, but like
right.
N-word, like. What is it, like brigades, paramilitary or something like that?
Because he's talking about how the North should use free black men to go down into the South to wage war against the Confederacy. But he happens to call them N-word brigades. And that's an entire paragraph of German. Right. And then he just throws that in there and it's like, dude, what? Why?
I think it's because, like we were talking about before, where it's just like, what are you exposed to?
Right.
Like, what are you aware of? And it's kind of like when, maybe kids from Eastern Europe that, like, don't know that many black people, but are exposed to U.S. culture, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Every day, and they don't really realize the implication of that word, of that term. Right. For people.
Well, I would imagine that even if you went to like the most enlightened areas of the United States during the Civil War, which may very well have been Philadelphia. Take that, Sean. Which may very well have been Philadelphia. Like Frederick Douglass, when he wrote, he said, if you make it to Philadelphia, you're... Now, Philadelphia was still rampantly racist at that time. I'm not saying, but in comparison to a lot of other places, Philadelphia was a lot more progressive in many ways. But I would imagine, even if you were around like progressive circles in Philadelphia or some other northern city at that time, and you threw the N-word around, I bet no other white people around you would be like, bro.
Hey, come on.
Bro, so where would Marx be getting his information from that would be like, this is a very naughty word that gets used over here? Like, it is very conceivable that he could have saw that word written many times and just kind of thought that like,
many times.
English word.
You're
cloud to say the N-word for rappers of any ethnicity. Pretty wild when you get to know when and how it came about. Yeah, I bet.
Look, we're not even trying to do like a defense of Marx using this term or word. We're trying to just understand the context for why he would use it and why he would go out of his way to use that term.
Because it's perplexing in the context.
Yeah.
It's like somebody writing a whole thing about how black people need self-determination, how they should... He says that there cannot be a freedom of white labor while blacks are... I shouldn't use the word blacks there, right? But when black people are in chains. There can be no emancipation of white labor while black people are in chains.
Yes.
So he's saying like everything right. You're like, yeah, Marx, you're killing it. You're totally right on this. But then he just describes them as N-words. And you're like, dude, like you were so close. What the fuck? What is wrong with you?
Ross got us, that's it. Checkmate.
Shut down the LLC.
Marx also supported.
One day we're gonna sell this. We're gonna sell this LLC to some meme page.
Marx also supported the Polish uprising of 1863, which sought to restore national independence to that long-suffering country. Already in the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels had signaled their support for the Polish independence as a core principle for the labor and socialist movements. Marx's writings on Poland and Russia were intimately connected. He and his generation viewed Russia as a malevolent reactionary power, which constituted the biggest threat to Europe's democratic and socialist movements. He saw the Russian autocracy, which he considered to be a form of Oriental despotism, inherited from the Mongol conquest, as rooted in the country's agrarian character, particularly in the communal forms and communal property relations that predominated in the Russian village.
Taguero says he wrote in the 1860s, it was known that it was a slur by that time. I too wonder where he got this information from, that he dropped it so freely. But like, what was a slur in the cultural context in the 1860s America? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
A slur was almost meaningless at that time. There was no social consequence for using a slur. A
right.
slur was just like the social, was like a social norm at that time. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but it's the level of progressive kind of criticism that we have of slurs today. I don't know if that existed in 1860s, whether it was among progressive circles, whether it was in academic circles. You know what I mean? Like, I imagine that these, just thinking about like my grandfather's generation and how, frequently slurs were used by people that are just, 2 generations back. You could kick that back a couple more generations. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if he would have maybe been cautioned severely against the weight and the damage of a word like that.
Right. Well, I mean, like, here's the thing. The 1860s, by and large, were like a golden, like more of a golden era of like white supremacy as we have never known it in our lifetimes than ever. Like, fuck, even the Irish weren't even white yet. Forget the fucking Italians. Jewish people were not even considered white yet. Okay? That's how far back we gotta go. Okay? Like, this is something that, like, a culture of that time is hard for us to really try and, like, wrap our heads around, right? By today's standards. Because you'll have, like, very pale white people of Pat's complexion and of Pat's ancestry. They're gonna be walking around being, like, spit on and told not to apply, right? And like not be allowed in certain areas based purely on a name and maybe a funny accent.
Yeah.
But like,
But yeah, and just on this slide, there's just a couple more things here about how he viewed Russia, which is something that changed radically. Marx believed that Russia was like the counter-revolutionary weight against revolutionary progression in Europe. He saw that like, it would be France, it would be England, it would be, Germany. All these places had this revolutionary potential, and Poland specifically, he would talk about having this revolutionary potential that was being extinguished by this counter-revolutionary demon of Russia. And Engels was very, 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 like, a lot of the stuff that we're kind of running cover or making excuses for maybe Marx using the N-word or maybe Marx growing out of his ethnocentrism. I still have not found a way to justify the way that Frederick Engels spoke about Slavic people in this book. It was utterly detestable. It was, you could take that quote and attribute it to Hitler and nobody would be like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
So I still have a big bone to pick with my boy Engels about that one. And I got a copy of 12 Principles, or the 12 Principles sitting up on my collected works as well, sitting up on my bookshelf.
Time to throw it out.
Gotta throw it out. Yeah, it's canceled. But yeah, and this concept of Oriental despotism, that like the Orient, meaning like the Eastern world, was uniquely despotic in its social organization, so much worse than the enlightened Western civilization, which we know is not the case.
I wonder if
and Powerful Finger, exactly. Che had reactionary views when he started his trips and writings until he saw how black people were treated. Che Guevara, as a young, rich kid from Argentina, said things about black people, said things about gay people that were not great when in his initial diaries. And, you know, he progressed in a way where, you know, then he decided to go to the Congo and live among the Congolese revolutionaries to try to foment a revolution of liberation in the Congo. And it's like, and he would go to the United Nations and chastise the United States for the way that they would treat black people. And he wrote extensively about how black people were mistreated in the United States and things like that. And it's like, you know, we can obviously look at a couple words that he used in his very, very early writings when he was during the Motorcycle Diaries. And you know what? If you want to throw away the whole man's whole reputation because of that and ignore all the extremely progressive views that he had on later in his life when he was politically educated, I mean, then you're just pretty much just a moron. I don't know. Like, you just have it all fucked up. Yeah, MLK had some hot takes on homosexuality, and not only homosexuality, but on women in general. You know, MLK was in many ways misogynistic.
He literally, like...
Same thing with Malcolm X.
He literally pushed out, like, a communist black woman from organizing with, oh, fuck, what was the group that he originally started with? The
Southern Liberty,
yeah.
the SLNC, what is it? Southern Poverty Laws? Oh, no, I'm tripping, man. I wonder if Nazis fleeing to Argentina had any effects on young Che. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that one. All right. This one's me. Right. As with India and China, by 1858, Marx began to shift his view of Russia, taking note of the looming emancipation of the serfs and the possibility of an agrarian revolution, as seen in several of his articles on Russia for the Tribune. Since Russian-occupied Poland stood between Russia proper and Western Europe, Poland's revolutionary movement presented a deep contradiction within the Russian Empire, one that had hampered its effects to intervene against the European revolutions of 1830 and to an extent, those in 1848 as well. At the same time, Marx severely critiqued French and other Western Democrats for having failed to reciprocate by adequately supporting their Polish allies. Moreover, these betrayals of Poland weakened the Western democratic and socialist movements, contributing to their defeat through Russian intervention, as had occurred on a major scale in 1849. Towards the end of his life, Marx began to emphasize anti-capitalist strains within the Polish revolutionary movement. So this is where you see a lot of Marx's writings about what it is to be like colonized, whereas like Poland was effectively colonized by Russia, and the way that a colonized nation has a different relation to revolution and socialism than that of a colonizing. Whoa, Maverick, $25 to Books Through Bars, making it a clean 600. Amazing. You've been so generous this stream. Thank you so much. Yeah, nice and even now until someone ruins it. Until someone would go in to make it not even. And it's not like you can take money out of it, so there's only one way to make it uneven. What dastardly villain would do such a thing? I gotta run and go to the bathroom real quick.
The whole thing was so ugly. I mean, I understand that there's absolutely a stereotype, but it didn't mean I think it didn't help me. It's different, I think. What did I miss? B would be like, have a word with you about associating Argentina with Nazis. I don't know. I'm not that big of a Ben Empanada fan, you know. I like his video on Gonzalo. I thought that was very good. I think he had a pretty decent video about neoliberalism, but that was like the last big video of his that I watched. I don't know if he's made anything since. It's any decent. And I definitely try to stay away from any of his takes on Twitter. Thank you, Potato King, for donating $2.50 to support Books Through Bars. Yes. Number one villain, Potato King. Should have added some just random cents, just, you know, 23 cents to it. Yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it, Dr. Maggot.
Hey. Oh, but taking 250. Yeah, I feel you, let him. All right, should we move forward a slide here?
Yeah. Did I not already?
Oh. Right, yeah, okay. You want me to read this one?
Yeah, can you?
As with India and China. No, we did. Well, yeah, I read this one.
All right. My bad.
Over time, Marx. I'm sorry, I'm eating almonds. Let me chew this almond. Okay. Over time, Marx worked out a new theoretical position on Britain and Ireland that had implications reaching far beyond this particular historical juncture. His theorization of Ireland in this period marked the culmination of his writings on ethnicity, race, and nationalism. Earlier, he had predicted in modernist fashion that the British labor movement, a product of the most advanced capitalist society of the time, would first take power and then enable Ireland to regain its independence, also offering the newly independent country both material and political support. By 1869 and 1870, however, Marx wrote that he had changed his position, now arguing that Irish independence would have to come first. British workers, he held, were so greatly imbued with nationalist pride and great power arrogance toward the Irish that they had developed a false consciousness, binding them to the dominant classes of Britain and thus attenuating class conflict within British society. So this was a big turn in the development of Marx. So you can see this kind of like more colonial mind state beginning to kind of transform here, because prior he wrote that Britain will progress to a point where it releases its stranglehold of Ireland and Ireland can then be independent. Now he's saying that Britain, which is the most developed capitalist nation in the world at the time, where if you follow this unilinear deterministic approach to revolution, should have the revolution first. They should be the closest to revolution, if you believe that. But now he's saying that they can't even have a revolution until the colonized, serf-like Irish first achieve their independence. So there has to be a decolonial, an anti-colonial movement, an uprising, a revolution that would necessarily come before a revolution in a bourgeois, highly developed capitalist civilization.
All right. This impasse could be broken only by direct support for Irish national independence on the part of the British Labour, something that would also serve to reunite labour within Britain, where Irish immigrant labour formed a sub-proletariat. British workers often blamed competition from the desperately poor Irish for lowering their wages, while the Irish immigrants often distrusted the British labour movement as merely another expression of the very British society that was ruling over them, both at home and abroad. On more than one occasion, Marx linked this conceptualization of class, ethnicity, and nationalism for the British and the Irish to race relations in the United States. Oh my God. Where he compared the situation of the Irish in Britain to that of African Americans. He also compared the attitudes of the British workers to the poor whites of the American South, who had too often united with the white planters against their fellow black workers. In this sense, Marx was creating a larger dialectical concept of race, ethnicity, and class. At the same time, he critiqued narrow forms of nationalism, particularly Irish versions that retreated into religious identities or remained so aloof from the British people that they failed to take account of the work of the International.
So this is like further evidence of a far more diverse understanding and layered understanding of these developments than what is typically attributed to Marx. Even this is another thing that I believe was something that was like a later development of Marx, or not of Marx, like something that was added to Marx. This concept of pitting either different ethnicities or different races against each other to drive wages down and to to extinguish solidarity within the working class. But Marx was keenly aware of this right during these struggles of his time, and he wrote about them. And then also he was also aware of like reactionary nationalism that would hamper like revolutionary nationalism. So, we read about Huey Newton talking about these things, but 100 years prior, Marx was also recognizing these same dynamics.
Yeah, I believe that the kind of Irish nationalism that he's talking about is of like middle class conception, or something to that effect, right? Where it's like, no, they don't want to push too hard against like distributing wealth or land or anything like that. The other interesting thing that he brings up about how like the British are blaming the Irish immigrants for like the cheap labor that they're being used for, right, is often what would happen in the American South. I mean, you can talk about like the rednecks and like how lefty working class movements in the American South used to be. They also still have like a tinge of racism to them,
And this is probably the type of writing that would shatter almost all of Infrared's grift about MAGA communism and things like that. I mean, I think that if these writings of Marx were actually highlighted, that type of incoherent ideology would be exposed for what it was.
A grift.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you had segregated unions in the South.
Almost all of these considerations found their way into Marx's most important theoretical work, Capital, albeit at times only as sub-themes. In the 1872 to 1875 French edition of Capital, the last one he prepared for publication, Marx not only corrected the translation by Joseph Roy, but also revised the entire book. Several of these revisions concerned the question of multilinear pathways of social development. Some key passages Marx changed for the French edition concerned the dialectic of capitalist development out of the Western feudalism that was at the heart of the book's Part 8, the primitive accumulation of capital. In direct and clear language, Marx now stated that the transition outlined in the part on primitive accumulation applied only to Western Europe, in the sense the future of non-Western societies was open and was not determined by that of Western Europe. And I completely missed this. Ryaland86, thank you so much for the $7.50 donation to Books Through Bars. We were in the middle of reading. I don't want to let that go by without saying thank you so much for donating to a very good cause. But yeah, this is it right here that I was alluding to, is that now even where you can find Marx's earlier writings and say, this really seems to indicate that you're saying that this is how this progression has to happen. Marx said, I wrote that only concerning Western Europe. I was talking about the progression of Western Europe. This is not universally applicable. You cannot take what I was writing about the specific conditions of Western Europe and just apply it anywhere to any situation, to any material condition. Even Marx himself said that that was not the case.
I mean, from what we read, it seems like he wanted to edit every version of the Capital depending on where it was going to be released.
Tate King, $2.37 to Books Through Bars.
Thank you, Agent of Chaos, Tate King.
I love it. Thank you.
So, India also figured prominently at the various points in the text of Capital. The Indian village served as an example of pre-capitalist social relations. While the sharp decline of the traditional Indian manufacturers and the resultant starvation of these handicraft workers was used to illustrate the terribly destructive effects of capitalist globalization at a human level. In addition, Marx devoted a major section of the first volume of Capital to the ways in which the British capitalist penetration had resulted in the destruction of the land and the people of Ireland. The forced immigration of millions of Irish to America, he concluded, showed the revenge of history, as Irish labor was helping to form the foundations of a new capitalist power that would soon challenge Britain's world dominance. Finally, he took up slavery and racism in Capital, showing the ways in which the extermination of the indigenous peoples of the Americas and the enslavement of Africans constituted major factors in early capitalist development. He also pointed at several key junctures to the deleterious effects of slavery and racism on the nascent labor movement in the United States, writing in Capital that labor in a white skin cannot emancipate itself where it is branded in a black skin.
That's what I was looking to say.
Yeah. In addition, he concluded that the end of slavery had opened up important new possibilities for American labor.
Yeah, just further driving it home, we've kind of touched on a couple of those points already, but that was the quote that I was looking for. Labor in a white skin cannot emancipate itself where it is branded in a black skin. Now, he might have thrown an N-word in there right after that, unfortunately, but
he may have.
We do need to look at what the sentiment is overall, I guess. Not that that's my position to really say, but... You know.
He didn't have too many black friends as far as we know.
Yeah. Okay. Finish chewing this almond. Take a little sip. Okay. During the years of 79 to 82, this is late Marx. These are the late Marx years. Marx embarked upon a series of excerpt notebooks on current scholarship on a multifaceted group of non-Western and non-European societies, among them contemporary India, Indonesia, Russia, Algeria, and Latin America. He also made notes on studies of indigenous people, such as Native Americans and Australian Aborigines. One core theme from these excerpt notebooks was the communal social relations and the property forms found in so many of these societies. While these research notes on their authors contained only intermittent or indirect expression of his own viewpoint, some broad themes could nonetheless be discerned. In his studies of India, for example, two issues emerged. First, his notes indicate a new appreciation of historical development in India, as against his earlier view of that country as a social society without history. Although he saw the communal forms of India's villages as relatively continuous over the centuries, he now noted a series of important changes within those communal forms, as they evolved from clan-based to residential communes. Second, these notes show his preoccupation not with Indian passivity as in 1853, but with conflict and resistance in the face of foreign conquest, where against the Muslim incursions of the medieval period or the British colonialists of his own time. Moreover, he noted, some of the resistance was based on clan and communal social forms. Sorry, I have to let my cat in. But yeah, so if you remember what we were saying in 1953, Marx had all these things to say about in India, that it had no history, that it was completely passive, and now a couple decades later, he's deeply researching the history of India, and he's going over these things like the Indian resistance to what I assume they're talking about is the Mughal Empire. Would you agree with that, Johnny?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then also to British colonialism.
Well, that, yeah, obviously.
Contrary to what he was saying before about this passive culture with no history and things like that. Now he's becoming very aware and cognizant of these histories and these resistances.
Sorry, I just noticed I have like a ton of people wishing me happy birthday.
Well, you hear that, guys? Johnny doesn't really care about the people that he's currently engaging with us here on stream. He has more important friends that are wishing him happy birthday.
It's fucking family members, because it's gonna be a big thing if I don't respond, like before fucking midnight. Thank you, Wilco.
Yeah, let's give it up for Johnny, everybody. Happy birthday, Johnny.
It is. It is my happy birthday.
Our special guy.
I am your special guy, chat.
Dude, stop censoring. Stop censoring Red Wizard. Red Wizard, I think you're on the shit list of the Posada bot.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a magic message. Read it and pass it.
Bona fide mon homme. Thank you. Telefo, I know that, like, in certain languages, the J is silent. But, alright, I'm just gonna leave it. So, Sam, oh, fuck it, I'm 34. Yeah, whatever.
You all heard it. Johnny's older than I am.
Yeah. I mean, I've said how old I am before, so, you know. I'm sure people are that dedicated to it. Whatever, let me just make it easy. Thanks, Wilco.
All right, San Diego, Jay. Be safe.
Fun of your treadmill on your birthday. No, it's fine. People can make fun of my treadmill all they want. I'm the one that is gonna have, like, you know, the better quality of life, you know, years from now. Because I walk regularly. Yes, yeah. Oh, no, wait. No, this is my Jesus year, I thought. I thought Jesus died at 34.
I think it was 33.
Whatever. Oh, thanks. Thanks. As long as it's not being added to my key wiki, I'll be happy.
I think it was 33 unless that Nas song lied to me.
A Nas song probably lied to you.
Jesus died at age 33. That's 33 shots from twin Glocks holding 16 apiece. That's 32, which means one of my guns was holding 30. That's what I completely based that on. Is that Nas line?
I could ask my friend's wife, who's a pastor, but I don't feel like going through all that effort.
I'm sure you could just Google it.
Sam, Pat knows a lot. I don't know how he makes room in his brain to remember, like, not only all of these facts, all of these books, right? But also seems to just be able to pull fucking rhymes from, like, songs from 30 years ago. Like,
That song is from like 30 years ago.
I like, right out of left field. Like, whole bars. It's amazing.
Dude, this cat just will not get out of my face right now. Hi. Hello.
Goddamn, Dr. Mag, I think you might be the youngest person in here.
Nah, there's got to be some Zoomers in here, right?
I mean, probably, like, just, you know, fucking lurking or something, making fun of us, building up a you know, doxing page or something.
A doxing dossier.
Yeah, adding things for the Key Wiki. I don't even know if Key Wiki is even still, like, a thing.
I don't even know what that is, to be honest.
Don't even worry about it then. Alright, finally I'm done with solid foods. And now I'm just gonna drink this miso soup while we do this. Alright, so, did we read this one yet?
No.
Alright, am I the one reading it?
No, we did read this.
Okay.
Sorry, my cats.
Never ask a lady her age, Pate King.
It's time to go in the chair. Time to go in the chair.
But, Papa...
I have hair all over my face and this cat rub it on me.
Yeah, at least you're not allergic to cats. I mean, if that were me,
Nah.
I'd be like, fucking, nah. I'd look high as shit. Why did the streamer start streaming while walking on a treadmill? Because they wanted to take their steps towards becoming a running streamer. You know, it's funny, that works on multiple levels. Because I'm in recovery. Am I reading this or are you?
I can read it if you want.
Oh, I can read it. You've been
Okay.
stepping up for me. Thank you.
Go ahead.
As had been the case in some of his earlier writings, especially in the 1840s, oh boy howdy, gender was a prominent theme in Marx's 1879 to 1882 notes on indigenous peoples like the Iroquois, as well as Roman society. Here it is possible to compare Marx and Engels directly on gender, since Marx's notes on the anthropologist Lewis Henry Morgan's Ancient Society were composed in 1880 or 1881. Engels discovered them after Marx's death and used them as a background for his own study, The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. While Engels' book has many flaws, it stands out in a positive sense as a ringing defense of women's equality. The only full-length book on that topic by a major theoretician of the early socialist movement. As against Engels, however, Marx tended to avoid any idealization of gender relations of pre-literate societies like the Iroquois. Always the dialectician, Marx followed Hegel in discerning dualities and contradictions within each social sphere, even that of egalitarian and communal pre-literate societies. Nor did he seem to share Engels' simplistic view that a world historic defeat of the female sex had occurred in Europe and the Middle East during the transition from pre-literate clan societies to class ones. As against Engels, it is likely that Marx was looking at these alternate forms of gender relations for his own time, not merely as consideration of the origins of class society, but also as potential sources of resistance to capital.
Yeah, and I actually heard somewhere that Marx might have got his information over somebody that was like a fake Iroquois or something like that.
Oh, a dude that was what's the
was
word?
that somebody on stream saying that? Was that somebody?
That was literally the video I played at the beginning, specifically for this part. I believe the person that he's referring to, Henry Louis Morgan, was that guy that was like obsessed with indigenous people.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I guess we have to take some of this with a grain of salt as well.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But it's positive, Both of them think that obviously women being second place or second class citizens of any kind is bad. So that's good, especially for the time in 1884. I mean, shit, you at that time could probably just throw your spouse that you married when you were 30 and she was 15 into an asylum because I don't know, she's not acting right or something, and then they lobotomize her. This is fairly progressive for its time,
right,
in context.
Yes, of course.
I mean, shit, even fucking John Brown, fucking patron saint of abolition, was how old when he married his second wife?
34 or something like that.
And how old was she again?
I think 16.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
So, also, did Engels think that women are treated the way they are because of writing?
Because of writing?
Because people learned how to read, and then all of a sudden, women were no longer. I don't know. He made it seem like pre-literate societies, it hinges on well, you know what? Women wouldn't be in the position they're in today if nobody knew how to read.
I'm not sure. I thought for some reason that had to do with maybe the lack of writing that they might have had on their own social institutions or their own the outlooks on gender. So you kind of have to take it from a literate individual's observations and writings about them. I don't know if that's what it was meant to or not.
I'm kind of joking more than anything, but
I think he had 2 wives, but he had 14 kids.
Who, Engels?
No, Dr. Baggett was asking about John Brown.
Yeah, his first wife died, I believe.
Yep.
And then
he got a younger model.
Yeah.
All right. So, if Marx's theorization of nationalism, ethnicity, and class culminated in his 1869 to 1870 writings on Ireland, those on non-Western societies reached their high point in his 1877-1882 reflections on Russia. In a series of letters and their drafts, as well as the 1882 preface to the Russian edition of the Communist Manifesto he co-authored with Engels, Marx began to sketch a multilinear theory of social development and of revolution in Russia. These writings built on multilinear themes from the French edition of Capital. In his Russian writings, Marx repeatedly and emphatically denied that the argument of Capital offered any clear-cut prediction about Russia's future. He noted that the social structure of the Russian communal village differed markedly from that of the pre-capitalist village of Western feudalism. The difference between Western and Russian pre-capitalist social structures suggested the possibility of an alternate form of social development and modernization for Russia, if it could avoid absorption by capital. So this goes a little bit further here into the situation of Marx's determinism, or even what, early Soviet Marxists may have believed, that they needed to transition, that they needed capitalism to conjure productive forces to transition into socialism. It seems that Marx is even saying here that pre-capitalist Russia may be able to avoid absorption by capitalism and still have a socialist revolution. And remind you that this was someone that 2 decades earlier was calling Russia like a counter-revolutionary, malevolent force in all of Europe.
Right. The author describes it as like, they had like an international like spy ring or something to monitor like international leftists.
Yeah.
It's wild. Kind of seems like a Russian tradition at this point. So, since Russia's rural communes were contemporaneous with industrial capitalism in the West, a village-based social revolution in Russia might be able to draw upon the resources of Western modernity while avoiding the pain of capitalist development. Marx was in no way proposing an autarky or a socialism in one country for Russia, which would have meant a socialism based on a low level of economic and cultural development, a notion he had critiqued as early as 1844 as crude communism. For as Marx and Engels argued in their 1882 preface to the Russian edition of the Manifesto, a radical transformation on the basis of Russia's rural communes would be possible only if accompanied by parallel revolutionary transformations on the part of the working class movements of Western Europe. In their preface, they also averred that such a Russian revolution could have a communist basis. Earlier, Marx had viewed anti-colonial movements in China and India as allies of the Western working classes. He had viewed national movements in Poland and Ireland in a similar light. Here, in the late writings on Russia, he went further, arguing that a communist development was a real possibility in non-capitalist Russia, if a Russian revolution could link up with its counterpart based in the Western labor movement. So, time and again, we've always heard that, Marx thought that the socialist revolution was never going to happen in a place like Russia or China, and that it was more likely to happen in England or somewhere else in Europe. Wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wrong. That person is wrong. Don't be
resoundingly wrong. Actually, there's many instances of Marx saying exactly the opposite of this.
Right. Many. It's kind of like, fucking go back 7 years and look at all my Facebook statuses of me saying feel the burn. Bernie's gonna win. Fucking he's really gonna do it. He's gonna make it this time. No, he doesn't. I just need to step away for 1 quick second, okay?
Okay, good. So, in sum, I have argued in this study that Marx developed a dialectical theory of social change that was neither unilinear nor exclusively class-based. Just as his theory of social development evolved in a more multilinear direction, so his theory of revolution began over time to concentrate increasingly on the intersectionality of class with ethnicity, race, and nationalism. To be sure, Marx was not a philosopher of difference in the postmodernist sense. for the critique of a single overarching entity, capital, was at the center of his entire intellectual enterprise. But centrality did not mean univocality or exclusivity. Marx's mature social theory revolved around a concept of totality that not only offered considerable scope for particularity and difference, but also on occasion made those particulars, race, ethnicity, or nationality, determinants for the totality. Such was the case when he had held that an Irish national revolution might be the lever that would help to overthrow capitalism in Britain, or when he wrote that a revolution rooted in Russia's rural communes might serve as the starting point for a Europe-wide communist development. And boy, was he right about that last part. Yeah. Johnny's gonna go scream in the bathroom real quick. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's so interesting that even, Marx stating like that revolution rooted in Russia's rural communes might serve as the starting point for a Europe-wide communist development, which in some ways was true. Obviously, it was never realized. There was a great amount of outside interference and destabilization, which prevented something like that happening. But, as we were reading with Killing Hope, you would know that many places in Eastern Europe, as well as Italy, as well as France, as well as, many of these nations did have like a very, very significant communist movement. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, if you go to the next one, this might be the last slide. The next one.
This one?
Nope, never mind.
Okay. On the one hand, Marx analyzed how the power of capital dominated the globe. It reached into every society and created a universalizing worldwide system of industry and trade for the first time, and with it a new universal class of the oppressed, the industrial working class. But on the other hand, in developing this universalizing theory of history and society, Marx, as emphasized in this book, not any of the other books we've read, this one, strove to avoid formalistic and abstract universals. Again and again, he attempted to work out the specific ways in which the universalizing powers of capital and class were manifesting themselves in particular societies or social groups, whether in non-Western societies not yet fully penetrated by capital like Russia and India, or in the specific interactions of working class consciousness with ethnicity, race, and nationalism in the industrially more developed countries.
Yeah, there you go. Just further elaboration on that.
I mean, Bernie is still good, but relatively speaking, important to remember that some things would absolutely be better had he not been fucked, but I highly doubt that it would have led to the destruction of the structure imperative to this. Oh no, not in any shape, way, or fashion. Yeah, no, I mean, like, look, fucking, and also, before everybody starts shitting on Bernie and completely ignoring everything I just said in that slide, without Bernie, I wouldn't be here. Without Bernie, this wouldn't happen. I'd probably still be like, I don't know, probably putting like a "I'm with her" sticker on the bumper of my fucking car or something.
I would have been here.
I would have been talking about how great Kamala Harris is and how, like, as a Desi American, how proud I am to have Kamala in the White House.
All right. So another question arises, however. What does Marx's multicultural, multilinear social dialectic reveal about today's globalized capitalism? Does his multilinear perspective on social development concerning Russia and other non-capitalist lands in his own time have any direct relevance today? Here I would argue that it is so today only to a limited degree. There are, of course, some areas of the world, like Chiapas, Mexico, or the highlands of Bolivia and Guatemala, or similar communities across Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, where indigenous communal forms survive, but none of these are on the scale of Russian or Indian communal forms during Marx's day. Nonetheless, vestiges of these communal forms sometimes follow peasants into the cities, and in any case, important anti-capitalist movements have developed recently in places like Mexico and Bolivia, based upon these indigenous communal forms. On the whole, however, even these areas have been penetrated by capital to a far greater degree than was true of the Indian or Russian village of the 1880s. Marx's multilinear approach toward Russia, India, and other non-capitalist lands is more relevant for today at a general theoretical or methodological level, however. It can serve an important heuristic purpose as a major example of his dialectical theory of society. Therein, he worked on the basis of the general principle that the entire world was coming under the domination of capital and its value form, while at the same time analyzing very concretely and historically many of the major societies of the globe that had not yet come under that domination. Whew. That was a paragraph.
Did you get all that, chat? What are your thoughts?
You get all that heuristics? Oh. All right.
Anything? No?
No, I don't have anything to add to that
No?
doozy. Doozy, yeah, bravo.
All right. One day it should be a topic that we can actually be like super silly on. We just do like a Hot Ones challenge, like while doing this.
That would be so fun. I've
That would
always
be
wanted to
amazing.
do Hot Ones.
Dude, same. I've always wanted to do that shit.
Every time I watch it, I'm like, fuck, I wish I could do this.
I just want to eat hot food and talk with my mouth full. Yeah, just because of wings. Alright, so we'll make seitan wings for Pat. At the level of the intersectionality of class with race, ethnicity, and nationalism, many of Marx's theoretical conclusions are more directly relevant to us today. In all of the major industrial countries, ethnic divisions, often sparked by immigration, have transformed the working classes. Here, the principles underlining Marx's writings on the relationship of race and class in Civil War-era America, on that of the struggle for Polish independence to the wider European Revolution, or on that of the Irish independence movement to British labor, have a more obvious continuing relevance. Marx's writings on these issues can help us critique the toxic mix of racism and prisonization in the United States, or to analyze the Los Angeles uprisings of 1992, and that's it. Or to understand the 2005 rebellion by immigrant youth in the Paris suburbs. Again, the strength of Marx's theoretical perspective lies in his refusal to separate these issues from the critique of capital, something that gives them a broader context without collapsing ethnicity, race, or nationality into class.
We got some funny comments here. What do you mean sillier content? What could be sillier than Marxism analysis? And then I have come to have something to listen to while I slowly go insane trying to do some of the hardest Minecraft parkour there is. I'm not exactly sure what Minecraft parkour is, but I support you doing it, and I'm happy that you're listening to us while you attempt it.
Yeah. I mean, like, oh wait, Cycrum. That's right. I need to get back to you. Cycrum wants to do like Minecraft or something. I've never played Minecraft.
I've never played it either.
I'm 34. Happy birthday again to me.
Happy birthday, Johnny.
Thank you. I've never played it, right? I remember when it first came out and I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, why would anyone want to play this? It's like we're going back in graphics. Like, everything is like worse. Like,
Yeah.
No, Cycrum. You should see me when I'm clean shaven. I look even younger. That like jumping puzzles. Is that like the deep fakes that I'm always watching with like Joe Biden and Trump and Obama? Oh wait, we got one more.
Well, and we're gonna bring it all home here, everybody. Whether
Sorry.
Whether one, as a multi-linear dialectic of social development, or two, as a heuristic example that offers indications about the theorization of today's indigenous movements in the face of global capitalism, or three, as a theorization of class in relation to race, ethnicity, and nationalism, I believe that the writings by Marx that have been in the focus of this book offer some important vantage points for today. And that is the end. I can finally put this book back on my fucking shelf. I am so prepared to do something different. And not that I didn't like this book. Like I said, there's a lot of value to this book, but I need some good old history to sink my teeth into. That was a very academic book that goes into a lot of philosophy and things like that. To talk about some events and dates and things and people that happened within the past 100 years. I'm very, very excited to do that.
So, Pat, let's bring up like what we're gonna talk about. Or the next book we're going to go over, and then I'll stop the recording for the YouTube vid. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, what is the next book that we're going to read?
The next book that we will begin, I believe on Monday, technically, because we're not going to be able to stream on Sunday, is called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ian Pape.
That's an I-L-A-N.
I-L-A-N.
That's the good Elon.
Yeah, not Elon Musk.
Oh,
Sounds like a rough read.
it's gonna be. It's got ethnic cleansing in the name.
Correct.
I'm gonna be crying like this entire month.
Right, but it's important that we educate ourselves, you know, in the darker histories that are still, you know, prominent struggles of today. Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, I actually popped into K How Do You Say's stream the other day, and they were in the middle of reading Black Shirts and Reds.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Are they going page by page, or what's the way that
Yeah,
they're
no,
going?
they're like straight up. They got the book in front of them, and they're like reading the book to the camera with like some nice tropical footage in the background.
Oh, that's fun. We like that.
Did we see the original CS and other game? Oh no, I'm not reading all that. Let's have a kafia night. I mean, I got two. I could give one to Pat. You know.
What do you have to give me?
A kafia.
Oh. Maybe.
Systems are tested. Oh, they're still talking about video games. I have one that shows the one. Yeah, I mean, like a night like tonight would be a nice. It's like where it's sort of like a shawl. They're so big. Like the ones from Hibarwi USA are so big. You don't expect them to be that big.
What else is going on in the world? I mean, I know I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot of this on Friday.
Yeah.
Do we have anything planned on Friday?
On Friday, I don't know. I guess the YouTube peeps will just have to pop in and see. I'm gonna cancel the recording. Al Salam, stay strong out there. Bye.
Bye.